It seems to me like the politicians are selling their votes to the highest bidder.
And they're doing exactly what the Founding Fathers didn't want them to do.
Do you feel our government is out of control?
It just seems to me the government's too intrusive in our lives.
Education is deteriorating. I think that our personal liberties are being invaded.
We've really lost hold on having a democracy in this country.
Do you believe you have any influence over what politicians do?
I don't trust them.
I don't trust them, and I don't feel that they're representing the people.
What choice do you really have?
I think the left works for the right, and the right sometimes works for the left. And we need something different, totally different.
With the Republican, with the Democrat, I don't see any great difference.
What is the difference? I don't think a whole lot. No, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference.
I think there's very little difference between the Republicans and Democrats.
The difference is just a name.
It's really difficult to isolate between one and the other. I mean, pick your poison, so to speak.
Is there a difference?
Not much. A lot of hot air.
I don't think there's really any difference. They all try to snowball each other and the public.
They're getting closer together.
I think they really are.
If you could, would you change things?
Everybody wants smaller government today. Everybody wants less spending. It's just not happening at this point.
What do you think? Do you think politicians and parties are all pretty much alike, advancing their interests at your expense? Well, there's one presidential candidate who is different. One thing, he isn't a career politician. He was a well-respected investment advisor for 30 years. He's the best-selling author of 11 books. He's a libertarian running for president. His name is Harry Browne. And for the next half hour, he's going to tell you how he believes we can get government out of your bank account and out of your personal life. Hi, I'm David Ruprecht, and I've had the pleasure of hearing Harry Browne's ideas. Now I'd like for you to have the same opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, Harry Browne.
Hello, David. Thanks so much for being here today.
So, tell us, why are you running for president?
Well, it's obvious that no Democrat or Republican is going to stop the relentless growth of government. No one but a libertarian is going to reduce government to its constitutional limits, reduce your taxes dramatically, enable you to live as a free American.
But don't other candidates say that they're going to reduce taxes?
Yes, they do, but they offer no plans to reduce government itself, which means that one way or another, you're still going to pay the cost of big government. I don't want to rearrange the tax code. I don't want to make government more efficient. I want to reduce government to the absolute minimum so that you're free to live your life as you want to live it, not as the politicians think is best for you. So that you can raise your children by your values, not those of some far-off bureaucrat. So that you can use the money you earn for your purposes, to spend it, save it, give it away as you think best.
But some people say the government is huge because Americans want big government.
Oh, I don't agree. Government's huge because the politicians can always find some political interest group to support every increase in government. And you and I, who pay the bills, are largely non-political. That is, we don't lobby in Washington. We don't spend all our time plotting to use government, or even to stop it from growing. And so the politicians win by default, and government grows by default. Today, people feel so powerless that the majority have stopped voting altogether. They see no hope of getting government back under control. But there is hope. There is a way to get your life back.
All right. What do you want to see happen?
Minimum government and maximum liberty made America so different from every other country, so much freer, so much more prosperous. I want to bring back that uniquely American system. I want you to be free of the Social Security system that's putting 15% of your income into a retirement scheme that's going bankrupt. I want to bring peace to your city and your neighborhood by ending the nightmare of drug prohibition. And I want you to be free of the income tax.
Do you really think all that's possible?
Yes, I do, or I wouldn't be running for president. Most Americans want government to leave them alone. And the key to achieving what we want is the great libertarian offer, which is a proposal to restore freedom to America and liberty to your life.
Where would you like to start?
Well, let's begin with Social Security. When you reach retirement age, do you think you'll receive Social Security benefits?
No.
No, it makes me mad because I already pay Social Security, you know, in my little summer jobs. And yeah, there's definitely not going to be any left for me.
I hope to, but at this point, I doubt it.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
No, I do not.
No.
No, I don't.
Nope. Nope. No.
Does anybody?
I hope so. Do I believe it? Yeah, but I don't think I'm going to get as much as my parents got.
We're certainly not getting what we put in.
It won't last that long. They're talking about already there's not enough money there.
I'm kind of worried about that because I'm 3 years from retirement. I'm very concerned.
If I depend on the government, I will be out there holding a cup, asking for handouts, okay? That's what the government will do for me.
Looks like people don't see much security in Social Security.
And they're right. Once again, Social Security is in trouble. And once again, the politicians are trying to figure out how to keep it going for a few more years. Social Security gives you nothing you can count on because virtually everything you pay into the system is spent immediately by the politicians. They spend your money on other people's retirements, on programs to get themselves reelected, on propping up the Russian ruble for another half hour. But the one thing they won't do is to put your money into a separate account with your name on it to secure your retirement. So if you're receiving Social Security benefits today, the money is actually being taken from younger people, perhaps your own children and grandchildren, and the supply of money is running low. Despite what you hear, there is no budget surplus, and no politician is doing anything to save Social Security. In fact, they're continuing to take money from Social Security to make it look like there's a budget surplus.
So what's the answer?
Well, if you're retired, you shouldn't have to depend on politicians taking more and more money away from your children and grandchildren. In place of Social Security, I want you to have your own individual account with a private company that can guarantee to deliver a lifetime income to you without fail. The politicians will never be able to touch that account or cut it or borrow from it for their pet programs. It will belong to you and you alone.
Where will the money come from?
Well, fortunately, the government has enormous assets that serve no constitutional purpose whatsoever. It owns hundreds of thousands of buildings, power companies, pipelines, military bases that are no longer used, large quantities of commodities, and much more. There's no constitutional reason for the federal government to own these assets. They should be sold to individuals and companies who can make good use of them. And the first proceeds from the sale should buy lifetime retirement accounts for everyone who's dependent on Social Security today or who is retiring soon. These will be guaranteed accounts from stable financial companies who have always honored their contracts, unlike the politicians who change the rules to suit themselves.
All right, well, what about the people like me who haven't retired yet? How about all the money we've put into the system?
Well, unfortunately, the politicians have already spent all of that money. So the question is, what would be better for you and for them from here on? So let's ask people. Would you rather continue paying into Social Security and let the politicians control your money? Or would you prefer to keep your money and save it on your own?
I'd rather save it on my own.
Save it on my own.
Keep it and save on my own.
I would rather keep the money and save it on my own.
I would like to be able to do with my money what I wish to do with my money at all times if I'm the one working for it.
I would rather not let the government try and deal with my money because I think they'll try and swindle me somehow.
Well, I think we all would have been better off if we were able to control our own money. I think most of us would have done much better.
I think if I was going to start over today, I'd put it in a private retirement account.
Definitely a private account.
A private retirement account. I think it's more secure because then I have access to it and nobody else.
If you're working now, you pay 15% of your income to Social Security, either directly or through your employer. Even if Social Security does survive until you retire, you'll get back only about $1,200 a month with no capital to leave to your children. But if you're under 50, eliminate the 15% Social Security tax and you'll have more than enough time to provide a real retirement for yourself with an income of several $1,000s a month. Plus, you'll accumulate $500,000 or more to leave to your children. You can do this without even being an astute investor. You can simply put a small percentage of your income into a bank savings account or have your employer do it for you.
But do you think America's ready for the dramatic change that you're proposing?
Oh, yes, I do. 5 years ago, Social Security was supposed to be the untouchable program. But today, even the politicians admit the system is going broke. And so they talk about saving Social Security, even as they go on squandering your Social Security money. Eventually, they'll try to fix the system by raising taxes and reducing benefits. What I'm offering is something totally different. I want your future to be completely independent of political promises. If you're already retired, I want to insulate you from the inevitable collapse of Social Security. If you're still working, I want to free you from the oppressive 15% Social Security tax. This is one benefit of the great Libertarian offer.
And you can learn more about Harry Browne's Social Security plan by visiting his website or by calling the toll-free number that's appearing on your screen. All right, the second issue you mentioned was drugs. Now, that's a subject that worries a lot of people.
Oh, of course. Drug abuse can be a terrible personal tragedy. But the government has elevated personal tragedies into a national crisis by its second attempt at prohibition. The first attempt, alcohol prohibition in the 1920s, was a terrible failure. And the second attempt, drug prohibition, has been even worse. It has caused drug use to escalate, and it has produced the worst crime wave since the 1920s. Teenage drug use is now many times greater than before the drug war started. And despite recent reports of reduced crime, the murder rate is still twice what it was before the drug war began. Some parts of cities are war zones, and thousands of innocent people have died. The dead include people who never used drugs and never sold them, but who died in mistaken drug busts, in the crossfire of gang warfare, or in the violence the drug war has brought to our cities.
But many people feel that if drugs were made legal and more readily available, that such violence might even increase.
Well, before there were drug laws, there were very few drug problems. There was no criminal market in drugs, no muggers trying to support a $100 a day habit, no pushers trying to hook your children on drugs, no gang warfare, no crack babies, no epidemic of overdoses. These things began in earnest in the 1960s when the drug war created a huge black market for criminals to fight over. There are no violent gangs fighting over alcohol or tobacco or pharmaceutical territories. That's because people can buy these products at low prices from legal companies, so criminals have no interest in them. But when drugs are illegal, there's no legal competition to undersell the criminal gangs, and so the gangs fight over the wealthy drug territories. But the good news is that the drug war is living on borrowed time. We asked people all over America, what do you think of the war on drugs?
I think the war on drugs is a sham.
It's a joke.
It's a failure.
I think it's ineffective. I think it's hypocritical.
It's long, it's costly, and there's got to be a better way.
I think it's foolishness. I think we're blowing a lot of money for nothing because it looks good.
We're spending billions and billions. It doesn't seem to be getting us anywhere.
It's been going on forever, and it's a lost cause. You know, I agree, because if you look back at prohibition, I think as far as history repeating itself, that's probably what's going to happen, because if they prohibit drug use, it's going to cause, I think, more violence than anything else.
I feel that the drugs should be legalized, some drugs should be legalized, and we will probably have a lot less crime as a result.
I'm not for marijuana, I don't care, but I think there's plenty of other things we need to be focused on.
The police time and law enforcement is spent on drugs, and if it wasn't spent on that, it would be spent on things that I think are more important, violent crimes and things of that sort.
But what war on drugs? You can buy drugs on the next corner if you want to. What war?
It was once assumed that anyone who opposed the drug war must want to do drugs. But today there's widespread understanding that the drug war is an immense failure.
But if drugs were legal again, don't you think drug use would increase?
Well, it's possible, but it isn't very likely. When alcohol prohibition ended in 1933, America didn't become a nation of alcoholics. There always will be some people who will try drugs. The drug war has escalated that by turning the market over to criminals.
It seems like the drug wars contributed to the growth of government.
Oh, yes. And what's more, the politicians use the drug war to justify invading your life. Treasury agents snoop in your bank records looking for suspicious transactions. Republican and Democratic judges allow SWAT teams to invade your home to search for drugs. based only on an anonymous tip, perhaps a tip from someone who just happens to dislike you. Police can now stop your car and tear it apart looking for drugs on the flimsiest pretext. The police can take away your car or even your home without convicting you of a crime. They can order you to remove your clothes at an airport, to search you for drugs. These things don't happen only to junkies and drug dealers. They happen to people just like you and me. Some are completely innocent. Some may have been involved in a single drug incident. If your child should make one silly mistake and be caught, it could mean a prison term of 10, 15, 25 years.
And meanwhile, many violent criminals get out of prison early.
Oh, yes. Prisons overcrowded with drug cases don't have room for the truly violent criminals. The murderers, the rapists, and child molesters, they get out early through plea bargains and early releases just to make room for someone who was caught smoking marijuana. If I'm elected president, on my first day in office, I will give an unconditional pardon to every federal prisoner who was convicted of a non-violent drug offense. I will empty the federal prisons of the people who are no threat to anyone and make room for the violent thugs who are terrorizing our streets. I want to return to the safe, peaceful society in which violent crime is prosecuted and innocent people are free to live their lives in peace. I want people with drug problems to be able to seek help without fear of being arrested. I want your children to be able to play in safe streets and attend safe schools. If we care about our children, if we care about our cities, if we care about our country, we must end this insane war on drugs. Ending prohibition is another benefit of the great libertarian offer.
And another part is the repeal of the income tax. Now, do you really believe that's possible?
Oh, yes, I do, as I will show. But since the income tax finances a large part of the federal government, the first question should be, do you think the federal government is too big, too small, or about the right size?
I think it's too big.
Too big.
Too big.
Too big. Oh, much too big.
Too big.
Too big.
Too big.
Too big.
Yes, too big.
Well, some people claim the government is big because Americans actually want the programs big government provides.
Well, let's ask them another simple question. What's your favorite government program?
Favorite government program. Favorite government program.
Favorite government program.
I don't know.
I don't know what my favorite would be. I don't know.
What's my favorite illness? I mean,
I don't know if I care that much about any of them.
I don't know. Can you give me some to choose from?
Do I have to have one?
I don't really have one. I don't have a favorite government. There's no program they do well.
That's sad, isn't it? I'm thinking I can't really think of any that are all that effective.
Most people see little value to themselves in what the government is doing, but they assume the income tax is necessary because government must be helping other people. But is it? By the government's own figures, the war on poverty has escalated poverty in America. Federal health care now costs senior citizens more than health care did before the passage of Medicare. Federal intrusions have run up the cost of education.
All right, so who does benefit from all this?
Well, mainly the politicians, who enjoy enormous power to reward those who help them and to punish those who don't cooperate. They create problems, and then they tell us that only they can solve those same problems.
And government is never reduced because those who want government programs are Johnny on the spot to pressure the politicians, while the rest of us are busy tending to our own lives.
Yes, the politicians can always find some interest group to justify and support any plan to expand government. And so the pressure is always toward bigger and bigger government. The Founding Fathers knew that such things as roads, education, commerce, agriculture, charity would be far more efficient, less expensive, and less intrusive of our liberty if handled by the states or by the people on their own. So the Constitution limits the federal government to providing a few services, national defense, a court system, and a few other minor activities, not to manage all of society and to run all of our lives. Once you violate those constitutional limits, even for a good program, it's just a matter of time until the politicians can pass any program they want, good or bad. And that's where we are today, with no constitutional protection against big government.
According to the Census Bureau, taxes at all levels of government, federal, state, and local, comprise 47% of the national income. So that means that you and I, and most everyone watching this program, are working half the time for the government and only half the time for our own families. So what do we do about it?
Well, we can't eliminate any one federal program by itself. There will always be too much pressure from whatever group benefits from it. And many people feel that there's at least one federal program that does some good, even if it is unconstitutional. So we have to offer Americans something better than that one program, whatever it may be. We have to look at all the unconstitutional federal programs as one giant cost. And what is that cost? It's what you're paying in income tax. If the government were limited to the Constitution, there would be no need for the income tax. For over 100 years, there was no income tax because the federal government stuck pretty closely to the Constitution. So the government survived easily on just tariffs and excise taxes. Today, those taxes produce more than enough to finance a strong national defense, the court system, and the other constitutional functions of the federal government.
And the program's not authorized in the Constitution?
Well, if you think there's some federal program that does good, think how much better it would be if it were run privately by people who are accountable for the results. And think how much better off you'd be if you didn't have to pay for all those federal programs you don't like. So here is the great libertarian offer. Would you give up those federal programs if it meant you never had to pay income tax again? And your children and your grandchildren would never have the tax burden you've had to endure.
Some people might say that this will leave the poor behind.
Well, ending the income tax is going to leave over $1 trillion a year in the hands of people who earned it, money that the politicians get to play with now. That $1 trillion will buy a job for anyone who can work and charity for anyone who can't work. Do you really believe the politicians and bureaucrats are more charitable and compassionate than you are? Than your friends or your church are? Today, Americans pay out almost half their income in federal, state, and local taxes, and still they finance hundreds of thousands of churches and other private charities without 1 cent of government money.
And, you know, most of us would donate even more money to charity if we didn't have to pay income tax.
Of course. Without the income tax, you'll be able to do much more for others, and you'll be able to do much more for your own family. If yours is a typical middle-class family, when we repeal the income tax, your take-home pay will go up by at least $10,000 a year. So I'd like to ask you, when that happens, what will you do with the money? Will you put your children in a private or religious school where you can get exactly the kind of education and values that you want for them? Will you invest in that business you've always wanted to start? Will you support your church or your favorite cause or charity in a way you've never been able to do before? Will you buy a new home or take your family on that vacation you've always dreamed of but never been able to afford? Whatever it is you want, that's what you should have, not what the politicians think best, and not what I think is best. Every dollar you earn should be yours to choose what to do with.
Well, we covered 3 big topics on this program, but we really haven't had the time to go into any of them in detail, so I'm sure many viewers still have questions. I encourage you to learn more about these proposals. Call the number that's on your screen or visit Harry Browne's website. His staff will be glad to send you a packet of information. Thank you, Harry Browne.
Thank you, David.
Harry Browne was born in New York City in 1933. He attended public schools in California and served in the Army from 1953 to 1956. A successful investment advisor, Harry Browne has written 11 books that have sold over 2 million copies. In 1985, he married Pamela Lanier Wolfe. They live in Nashville, Tennessee.
Do you want smaller government? Do you want to be free of the income tax? Do you want to be free of the Social Security tax? Do you want your neighborhood to be free of criminal drug dealers? If you do, the great Libertarian offer provides the only chance we have to succeed. It may seem that you have many choices, perhaps eliminate this federal program while keeping that program. But the reality is that you will never get to decide which are the good programs and which are the bad. You simply can't cut government one program at a time. That's never happened, and it never will. The pressure is too great for government to grow. So you really have only two choices. Either we stop the federal government from doing anything not authorized in the Constitution, or you resign yourself to a government that will continue to grow ever larger, taking more and more of your income, invading more and more of your life. I want you to be able to plan a simple, low-cost, truly secure retirement as you think best, not as the politicians decide. I want you to be able to live in a safe city and a safe neighborhood without black markets, drug dealers, and gang warfare. And I want you to be able to live your life as you think best, not as the politicians decide. I'm not prepared to give up and say we've lost, that the politicians have won, that there is nothing we can do to make America the free country it was meant to be. We can do something about it. With your help, we can have the America you want. That's the America we once had. That's the America we should have. Like the Statue of Liberty, providing light and hope and inspiration for the entire world. And with your help, that's the America we will have.
If you'd like more information or to become a part of this historic campaign, call 1-800-777-2000 or visit Harry Browne's website at www.harrybrowne.org.